Yeah, I'd like to know a couple of things. Firstly, what's the total number of different churches you went to, and how many times did you go to each of them? Or were they all in Illinois? And the other question, I'm very interested. You didn't tell us who was the preacher before you went to the church knew who you were.
Good question. Yeah.
So I'm very interested.
I went to 10 churches for Jim Henderson.
Yes.
For his going. I went to all different churches. And when I was writing the book, I visited maybe 2 of those churches again for different services, but otherwise I went to another 15 or so churches when I was writing the book. Those churches were all across the country. So I went to Joel Osteen's church, which is the biggest one in Texas. Their church bought out the basketball arena where the Houston Rockets used to play. That's how big their church is. I went to Ted Haggard's church before he had his little scandal. But I went to a lot of those churches. So about 25, 26 altogether when writing the book and going to these churches.
Do they cover the whole range from Unitarian to the
No.
most notorious anti-scientific organizations?
These were pretty much predominantly evangelical churches, and the reason being the Christian book company that was sponsoring this, they're an evangelical publisher, and they know that if I write about, Southern Baptists or something, that's not going to get as much of appeal to the book buying market as an evangelical church. None of the pastors, except for the pastor whose living room I went to, he knew I was coming. None of the other churches had any idea I was coming. In fact, one pastor, Willow Creek is the big mega church in Chicago. It's actually known as the most influential church in America. I went there for the first time for Jim Henderson's visits. And later on, the same pastor was talking, he was doing another sermon later on, and he said he found out when he read the Wall Street Journal article that I had visited their church, and he made a comment to his church of 20,000, man, if I had known that an atheist was coming, I would have changed my sermon. But no, they didn't know I was coming.
No, even if you went to church 5, he said you went to 10 churches, yeah. 50 times, total 50, that's 5 times each.
About 20, no, I went to about 25 churches altogether, 1 time each, with a couple churches I went twice.
So for Jim Henderson,
Jim Henderson, I went to about 10 churches.
It was total $500.
$500 altogether, which was donated. I went to 10 churches for Jim. I went 1 time to each church.
Okay, well that's only $100.
You're right, and that was the part of the deal. Jim said, don't go to 50 churches.
Just
go to 10.
Understand that.
Yeah, so I didn't go to that many. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. You talked about a number of things that would be good for atheists to keep in mind when dialoguing with Christians. Would you have any advice for Christians in terms of what might they want to keep in mind when dialoguing with atheists?
One of the things I think is, first, don't go with any presuppositions. Don't think, are you a Christian? Is that what you're asking? Or?
Yeah.
Okay, what I would say is a lot of Christians, when I talk to them, they seem to think that they know what I'm thinking. And when they go in, they think I think certain ways about them. They think I think they're idiots, and I don't. They think things like that. I would lose all of those things. I would actually tell them, that you're interested in a dialogue. Because usually when atheists get approached by Christians, it's almost always in an attacking, you gotta convert to what I'm saying sort of way. And I think, some Christians that email me, and I do, one of the amazing things, I don't get a lot of hate mail from Christians. I don't get a lot of people telling me I'm going to hell. I don't get a lot of people saying I want to convert. I get a lot of people who email me and say, hey, listen, I read your book, or I heard about your story, or I look at your website, and I just have a couple questions I wanted to throw your way because I'm actually interested in this conversation. And as soon as I read that, I'm thinking, that's really nice of them to put that up front and to say they're not here to attack me or anything like that. They really want to know my answers to certain questions. And after they say that, they can kind of ask whatever they want, and I'm going to give them a realistic answer, and I think a lot of atheists would feel the same. And I think there's such a stereotype of how Christians interact with us that atheists do the same thing. When someone says, I'm a Christian, I want to talk to you, I'm a little afraid as an atheist, like, oh, I know where this is going. So when a Christian kind of says up front, listen, I know a lot of people have treated you in this kind of way, and I know, Campus Crusade for Christ, a very fundamental kind of evangelical church, they do a thing called confession booths, where they'll say, if you want to confess your sins, come into our booth, and they do this on college campuses. And when you step into the booth, they talk, you don't talk. They say, listen, I just want to say I'm really sorry for everything I've done to you, and I know my other Christians treat you like crap. That's an amazing thing that they're doing right there. And I think when a lot of Christians say, I know you have a lot of thoughts about the way you might think of me, but I really want to have this conversation with you. I really want to know what you think about this. And then you have a real dialogue, and then you could keep your beliefs, and you could tell them, here's why I believe this, or here's why I think you're wrong. But it's no longer seen as an attack. And I think that's what's helped. On my website, Friendly Atheist, I have other people writing besides me. They don't write as often as I do, but one of the other writers is a Christian pastor. One of the other writers is an atheist, and one other girl who hasn't written that much, I didn't even know this, she's Mormon. Who knew? But like the Christian pastor, when he writes stuff, he does it in a way where atheists, and he responds to comments from other threads too, where he's not there to attack you. He's there because he really wants to know what atheist opinions are. And he wants to use that. And he'll respond. He'll be the first to say, listen, I don't think the way that you assume all Christians do, or something like that. And it's amazing how well, respectfully people treat Mike on that website, whereas other Christians will come and do what I call like drive-by conversions, or drive-by conversions. They're just like, believe in Jesus, and then they leave the website. It's like no one wants to talk to that guy. But when you come in there and say, listen, I heard what you said, and I kind of disagree with the way you're putting that, here's what I'm thinking. All of a sudden, people are very willing to talk. Yeah?
This is part B. Have you had any in-person dialogue? Like, you've done a lot of dialogue on your website through blogs. Have you had any in-person dialogue, and would there be anything different that you've done?
I've had a few of them. Most when I go to do talks like this, I have had a lot of conversations, and just in personal life, when you meet people, you do have conversations like this. And I have to remind myself that, again, like, I don't know where they're always coming from, and a lot of times they do approach me with that attacking sort of mentality. But what I found is the way it works online is the same type of way it works in person, where when they come up to me, if they really want this dialogue, it's going to happen. And if they start spewing Christian talk, I try to steer it in a way that's more conversational. I actually met someone who I didn't know at first, but turned out to be very fundamentally Christian, like everyone who's gay is evil type of Christian. And when I kind of steered the conversation to the point where I wasn't attacking her, but I was kind of questioning, where do you get that belief from, or why do you think that? She didn't think I was attacking her either, but she was more open to talk about it. And it got to the point where some of the things, she had a hard time really saying, well, I get that because the Bible says so. She didn't want to give me that answer. She was trying to justify it in another way. But we were able to have this conversation, two people who I never would have thought would have been able to have that conversation, because neither of us was out there to convert or yell at each other. One thing that Jim Henderson says to the Christians he speaks to is, I'm not going into these conversations with a conversion focus, I'm going in with a conversation focus. And it was to the point where I work with the Secular Student Alliance. One of our affiliates in Washington State emailed me and said, hey, listen, you know how you talked about this eBay auction and that Christian pastor? And I'm like, yeah. And he said, we're really interested in having a speaker at our campus. And I'm like, oh, that's great. He's like, can you give me the number of that pastor? He's really cool. And the pastor came to this atheist group and spoke to the atheist group for a couple hours. They loved him. Because he was very upfront. He's like, here's what Christians do wrong. This. Here's what you guys do wrong. This. And here's how you can fix that. They loved him. And it's that sort of mentality. If you go in, not attacking, but saying, look, here's what we do wrong, but here's where I want to correct you, or here's where I think we can get along a little better, because you're not going to convert the other person. So where do we find the middle ground where we can make this work? That seems to yes?
I have a question on general atheism. I agree that going by science and logic, you can prove that there is no God. But if everybody in the world starts believing there is no God, do we end up having more chaotic and selfish world?
What is that last part?
If everybody in the world believes or does not believe in the existence of God, will we end up having more chaotic and selfish world, because there is nobody watching? You can do whatever you want. There is no help.
I don't think that would be the case. You could say that if that's the case, if you go, hey, here's a gathering of a lot of atheists in this room, I don't see a lot of chaos here. If you go to an atheist conference, I don't see a lot of chaos there either. I think people have a way of watching themselves, and there is law enforcement, but there's also a sense of how you treat other people in society, that it works on a small scale. Look, if religion was gone and people weren't religious, we'd be fighting about a lot of other stuff. That's going to happen.